couldn't imagine that when I was 20 years old and I started with canna trade. Definitely not. But for sure, these were my dreams. So as said before, I grew up in a legal environment, and from one day to the other, more or less, it stopped. And I couldn't accept that. And it was my dream, like, hey, one day we will be back. If I would have known back in the days that 20 years later, we're still in the process of the discussions, don't know if I would have said, okay, yes, let's do it. And now I see we still need patience, as we see now the German government and how it's going on since the first announcement. I guess every one of us would have loved if it would be already there.
CB Expo. Nential. Ben Arn is the founder of CB Expo, a cannabis event that's moving beyond its Swiss roots and embracing the changing outlook of medical and recreational weed across Europe. With the next event taking place in Dortmund this September, he gives us a sneak peek behind the canna-curtain. And I'll say hello and welcome to the Lobsterpot podcast. I'm Dave Barton, and I am here with a couple of guests. Well, first of all, there's that man, what's his name again? Jamie Bonthron. Yes, he's my co-founder of Thermidor. How you doing, Jamie? You all right?
Yeah, good. That's the sort of energy I need right now. I need to pick me up today, Dave.
Oh my God.
We gone, never supposed to date the podcast, but we did a podcast recording yesterday and we were talking about how much I like the rain. And yet today I see the sun shining. So my energy levels have dipped. I need that kick.
When you started talking about dating the podcast, I imagine you sort of taking it out for dinner and things like that, sort of, schmoozing the podcast. But schmoozing is an important part of what we do, which is why we go to events to meet people. And on the subject of events, today's guest is one of the foremost event organizers for the cannabis industry in, I'd say, Europe, actually. It's Ben Arn from Canna Trade, CB Company, CB Expo. The man's reputation sort of precedes him. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. And I have a rainy day today, which is also special because we had 1 month or more only sunshine. So cool that all of us are happy with the weather today.
So normality, light jacket weather has returned to Switzerland.
Exactly.
Excellent. So tell us, Ben. Obviously, a lot of people will know CB Expo and CB Club. You held the first CB Club kind of event outside of Switzerland in Berlin this year, just out. What we're calling Berlin Cannabis Week now. It's not ICBC and other stuff. It's Berlin Cannabis Week. So, how was that? And you're holding the next ones coming up in September in Dortmund. So, what's the focus on Germany? Obviously, there's lots happening, but tell us more. Tell us more about your plans.
Yeah, definitely a lot is happening in Germany, or we all hope that it will. And after we have been acting for more than 20 years only in Switzerland with events, we get asked by many people and companies to come to Germany with the CB events. CB events is our business line, and we have the small format CB Club, which is a networking event, which we did in Berlin a few weeks ago, and it was quite a success. So we got many good feedbacks. And it was a little bit the start point for our Germany journey, where we will have a bigger one by mid of September. We are partnering there with Messe Dortmund and with Intertabak, which is the world's largest tobacco B2B and vape event, where cannabis definitely is already a topic since a few years. And now, within the past few months, definitely a big topic. And so we come together with the Intertabak, and we will do the CB Expo as a parallel event during the weekend of Intertabak.
Very, very cool. So, just to go back a little bit, why cannabis? You said you've been doing canna trade for the last sort of 20 years. And when did CB come into being? And tell us a little bit more about that sort of story from,
Yeah, cannabis came in my life when I was an older teenager. I grew up in Switzerland, and we had more or less a legal situation by the end of 90s until 2003, 4, and that's how I grew up. So I could buy seeds, clothes, weed, hash, everything in stores. We even could smoke in trains back in the days. And if I have a look back now, it's clearly that the world wasn't ready in the year 2000 that small Switzerland will completely legalize cannabis. But that's how I grew up. And when politics changed in 2004, I joined the movement of cannabis legalization. And I was already kind of an event organizer. I started when I was approximately 11 years old with organizing first school discos and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
So through all these circumstances, it came that I could connect these two passions, cannabis and event organization, with becoming the CEO of canna-curtain in the years 2006, 7, 8.
Excellent. And so how did it kind of evolve more into sort of the CB Expo and the CB companies?
It came up when, first of all, we had a look to what's happened in the world, and we saw the professionalism coming up with, I would say, the countries who legalize cannabis. And canna-curtain, our baby from the year 2000, has a main focus on consumers, on B2C. And we realized, okay, we will not be able to cover the whole spectrum of cannabis, and I see it a little bit in B2C consumer focus, in serious B2B business, and also in medical. And then we split the canna-curtain into 3 companies. So canna-curtain can now go fully on for a consumer-orientated culture show, where also a small B2B part is still there. So with the CB company, we do the CB lounge at canna-curtain. So also make this space happen at canna-curtain where the professionals can interact with each other. We founded the CB company for the B2B events, and we also founded a third company called Cannabis Medicinalis, where we do medical pharma strictly events.
Are you obviously you're part of the show circuit, you know, we see you, and you're obviously involved in the industry broadly, both to kind of help grow it and to, you know, for your own business. Do you kind of get inspiration from some of the other events that are on the calendar? Do you go to shows and you go, oh, that's quite a good idea, quite like that? Or do you know, how does that work?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to visit, I would say, between 5 and 10 other cannabis events a year, and for sure also other events. And you can imagine, I always see something. I guess it's the same thing when a grower is entering a grow room. He can't just say, "Oh, that's nice." He has to see, to feel. And always we see things which the others make better, so we can learn. And we also see things which probably are better at our events. So it's a continuation. I say a continuing process whenever I go somewhere.
What's it been like, kind of moving out into Germany? Obviously, it's not a huge cultural shift, but I imagine there are some challenges that may be different than working inside of Switzerland. What's that been like over the kind of past couple of years, as you've seen, you know, potential with changes in legislation? What's that been like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you said it right. Switzerland and Germany are culturally very close to each other. So I would say, and also I'm half German, I have a German family. So I guess I know about the culture of Germany enough to know how to talk to people and how people are acting. That's easy. Definitely changes in Switzerland. I'm working here since 20 years, so I have 1,000 of contacts on my mobile, and that's new in Germany. So that was an experience to trust the printing company that they will bring me the batches in time, because here in Switzerland I just know it that they will bring it. So these were like small little things. And also Berlin was very special for me, because I'm visiting Berlin since I'm 15 years old, every year, once, twice. It's one of my Lieblingsstadt auf Deutsch. And that was really a pleasure to be there and organizing a cannabis event in Berlin.
No, it's a lovely city. I really like Berlin, and it's interesting because I feel like, even though it's still quite a sort of liberal, sort of left-leaning city, it feels very kind of, you know, open, and there's lots of different types of people from all over the world. It still feels like, I mean, the cannabis scene there is still very much underground. It's not always kind of decriminalized or visible, that I've noticed. Do you think that there's a kind of difference in attitude between sort of Germany and Switzerland in terms of like acceptance of cannabis?
Yes, but it changed a lot. When I remember back when I was a teenager and I grew up here in the legal environment in Switzerland, and I went to the first times I went to Berlin, and it was so hard to find something to smoke. And even in the very alternative regions, where in the squats people were like really scared, like, oh, don't talk about cannabis on the street, and okay, no, I don't have enough, I can't give you something. And this, when I'm in Berlin now, this changed completely. If I have a look at Mary Jane, how open the consumption of cannabis there is, and it isn't a problem at all. For me, it feels Germany made or at least Berlin. I guess there are differences in Germany. If we go to Munich,
Yes.
it's maybe not the same. But for me, it's a pleasure also as a cannabis consumer to go to Berlin and always find some good stuff to smoke and don't fear about police.
Did you maybe looking back, it's easy with hindsight to say it, but growing up as later into kind of teenage years when cannabis became a thing and it became a part of your life, did you ever think I would be organizing a professional B2B event in Berlin, ahead of legal, regulation? I imagine not, because it would take some serious vision to be able to do that. But, are you surprised at where it's got to, I suppose?
Yes and no. So for sure, I couldn't imagine that when I was 20 years old and I started with canna trade. Definitely not. But for sure, these were my dreams. So as I said before, I grew up in a legal environment, and from one day to the other, more or less, it stopped. And I couldn't accept that. And it was my dream. Like, hey, one day we will be back. If I would have known back in the days that 20 years later, we're still in the process of the discussions, don't know if I would have said, okay, yes, let's do it. And now I see we still need patience, as we see now the German government and how it's going on since the first announcement. I guess every one of us would have loved if it would be already there.
Interesting. I'm just, again, a sort of random question. Do you think that the way in which Germany is looking at legalization, do you think that feels like the right way forward? Do you feel it's too over-regulated, or do you feel like it's not regulated enough? What's your take on it? I'm kind of intrigued.
Well, that's a big question. That's a really big question. So I'm not that involved into the German politics as I am in Switzerland. So I can probably better talk about Switzerland, where I see here in Switzerland, we go a slow way, but it's regulated, it's clear. We have the medical law, they're now allowed to grow, they're now allowed to prescribe. We have the pilot projects. They need a long time until you get the license to start your pilot projects, but 3 or 4 have started now, and many are in the row. And also with my contacts I have to government and authorities here in Switzerland, I see, hey, this is clear, that's the way we want to go. We want to have a regulated cannabis market within the next 5 to 10 years. The thing in Germany, I guess, there are big politics behind, as far as I can see it, in this coalition party and all the other parties around. Everyone I'm talking to say to me that the next elections will not bring the same coalition again on paper, which makes it probably hard to follow that plan. And in terms of what Germany is trying to do, I feel it like that. Home growing, wonderful, please. So I would love to plant my plant in my garden as I used to do back in the days. Social clubs, for me, a funny idea if I would be 20 years old and collect my friends, let's do a social club. In terms of a regulated cannabis industry, a quality controlled market, I don't feel that it's the best idea, because as a government, I would rather control 100 or 200 companies, producers, than X thousand social clubs. So if I would be the minister of drug policy in Germany, I would go the way for the Modellprojekte rather than the way the social clubs.
Well, don't write it off yet. You didn't predict you would be where you are now. So maybe in 20 years' time, you will be the minister for drug policy in Germany. So don't ever write it off. It's a possibility.
Thank you. Keep in mind.
You heard it here first, people. You heard
That's
it
it,
here
yes.
first. That's it.
This is where the campaign starts.
I will come back to you, so please keep this recording.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. But where else are you kind of excited by? I mean, what other markets in Europe or even beyond do you think are worth paying attention to next?
France. So even if I'm not super French-speaking man, what I hear from France, there is also a lot going on. And we know they have the highest consumer rate of cannabis consumers in Europe. And back in the days, it was even forbidden to wear a hat with a cannabis leaf on it. And now, what I heard, it's going to change. So I hope they will do. It would also be a good sign for, let me say, for all south of Europe. And the other thing for sure, Czech Republic, which already started many years ago when they legalized at least the owning and the consumption of any drugs. So I guess they are also pretty open. And still, I would say it is important for Europe what Germany is doing. So the better Germany will do, the better and the faster Europe will follow.
Yeah, it really sets a precedent, doesn't it? And, if the biggest country, probably by population in Europe, I'm guessing that, well, bigger than the UK, isn't it? It sort of gets it right. It's like, okay, right. We've seen, again, we were talking to someone in Canada yesterday, and we were sort of saying, what can the world learn from Canada? And again, it was very much like, well, there's things we've done right, things we've done wrong, and it's kind of, but at the end of the day, everywhere's different. That's the thing as well. Like everybody individually is different, affected by cannabis. It's like, there's a cultural kind of legacy in some place, and there's kind of absolutely none, which is just always been something suppressed, underground, prohibited for so long. And it's like, there is that sort of innate stigma, even in kind of legal markets, which is still very prevalent. So yeah, again, it feels more polarized here in Europe. I think the sort of attitudes towards cannabis. I mean, that's just my perception. I mean, I don't have any evidence to. I mean, here in the UK, we have a buoyant kind of illicit market, but we have a medical market that's around about 100,000 people, which from a nation of 67 million people, people just don't know, that medical cannabis is legal. But again, those that do are resistant to it to the extent because of the cost, because we're not used to paying for healthcare here in the UK, and it's not covered by insurance, or it's not available. Well, only in extreme cases is it sort of prescribed on the NHS, and it's just a real kind of minefield. And there's no kind of strong political backing, I feel, either parties here in the UK. So it feels like it's, maybe in the US you've got support on both Republican and Democrat side, but you don't really have that here, I don't think, at least not openly. Do you think, I mean, what's your kind of perception? Do you feel it's similar sort of situation in Switzerland? There's or is it kind of broadly everyone's sort of supportive or ambivalent?
The more and more, and what changed Switzerland's, let me say, mindset a lot was CBD. So
right.
Before we had, let me say, more strictly like left parties were pro, right parties were against, Christians as well, and the middle, let me say, the financial party was like not really interested into that, and CBD changed everything. So everyone knows now somebody who can now better sleep with CBD, stuff like that. So that was a big change. And for the last 4 years, we had a pro-cannabis parliament in Switzerland, where also the financial party said, yes, now we want to do it. They were like the force behind the legalization of medical cannabis, and they're now also motivated to change the recreational law. And on the right side, where we have the SVP, the Swiss Volkspartei, there are many farmers, and some of them, they still remember the 90s, where they also were cannabis growers. And so I guess now we really have a pretty good consensus in Switzerland. Let's regulate it. But also the next elections this year in October will be important for us to still have this majority of pro-cannabis parliament members.
So it seems so crucial at the kind of early stages to have that momentum or that broad support. Otherwise, it feels like, I keep hearing people say, oh, it's all very well Germany doing this, but it could take 8 to 10 years for them to kind of get it right. And in the meantime, what kind of happens? Whereas here in the UK, we're like, yeah, 8 to 10 years for legalization. That probably sounds about right from a recreational perspective. And it's just like, well, but momentum is momentum at the end of the day, isn't it? That's what I always think. It's like, it's not a thing till it's a thing. And suddenly overnight, it's like, oh, really? We can do this now. I mean, it never is that obvious. It's never that clear cut, but it feels like to the average person who's kind of like, Oh, really? Wow. How did that happen? It's like, well, fucking hell, it's taken 20 years, but there we go. Overnight, it's one of those things, overnight success, isn't it? 20 years of sweat equity. So
Exactly.
Looking ahead to Dortmund, what are some of the things that you're really excited about? I know there's obviously a big lineup of speakers that you're kind of putting together at the moment, and the kind of alignment with Intertobacc is, I suppose, particularly interesting because it gives more attention to the industry, from another industry that are interested in it. So what are some of the things that you've got kind of planned or that you're excited about for Dortmund?
Yeah, the whole thing. Maybe if you give me a minute, let me explain quickly what's the basic concept of it. So we have Intertobacc at 3 days in 8 halls with 700 stands. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we start with CB Expo on Friday afternoon in the city center of Dortmund at the Brauturm. That's a tower of the old Union Brewery where we do the reception. And then it's Saturday, 1 day conference and expo. And the idea behind this, all those B2B visitors of Intertobacc, they probably need at least 2 days to go through their 700 stands or 2-day halls, because there is the shisha hall, the cigar hall, the vape hall, to do their business. So our idea is we let them be 2 days at the Intertobacc, also for the interested people out of the cannabis industry to attending Intertobacc. And then we bring them on Friday evening to the wonderful Brauturm in Dortmund to have a wonderful network reception. And then we have 1 day fully focused on cannabis at the same location where Intertobacc is. It's called the Congress Center of Messe Dortmund, which is a beautiful building renovated only a few years ago. So it can keep the style and the level of the CB events. We also always take care about having a nice space, a nice atmosphere, some music in the background, some good food, some good drinks, and for sure, a place where people can smoke.
What more could you ask for from an event?
Exactly.
That's great.
Cool. I was going to say, and it's it's September the 15th and 16th in Dortmund at Intertobacc, and you can find out, where can people find out more?
On www.cb-expo.com.
Very cool. And we're obviously we're going to be attending, so we look forward to seeing you there. Any final advice for people who as the trying to find out a little bit more? I think you've given us generously given us a discount sort of code that we're going to share, which is awesome. So thank you for that. But
I would recommend all the people use the Thermidor discount code, so you get the ticket with 20% discount. And the second important point is book your hotel soon, because there will be about 15,000 people visiting Intertobacc. Most of them will need a hotel room, and Dortmund isn't a super big city. So that's my tip.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Ben, and we will look forward to seeing you there. And take care, and I hope you have a great rest of the summer. So thanks again, sir.
Thank you. Enjoy your sunny day today, and hopefully sun will shining too in Dortmund in 2 months.
Very good. Alrighty. We'll catch you soon. Thanks, Ben. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.